Hey, take a look around you for a second. Seriously, the words you use, the little habits you have, even the stuff just sitting on your desk, all of it has a secret history. It's kind of like our whole world is a museum full of invisible stories. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on some of the wildest exhibits that have been hiding in plain sight this whole time.
Okay, let's start with something super simple. Why do we say bless you when someone sneezes? I mean, it's just automatic, right? It's the polite thing you're supposed to do. Well, it turns out this little custom has a pretty grim origin story. We have to go all the way back to Pope Gregory I during the awful plague of 590 CE. He actually ordered people to bless anyone who sneezed because back then they thought it was one of the first signs you'd caught the plague. Yikes.
All right, so let's dive right in. We're about to get into some of the quirky and honestly kind of weird backstories behind the things we all say and do without even thinking about it. Okay, how about this one? Keep your elbows off the table. Everyone's heard that, right? We're all taught it's about good manners, being polite. But really, the whole thing started for a super practical reason. Picture a medieval feast. These long wooden tables were just jam-packed with people, shoulder to shoulder. There was literally no room for elbows. So, putting your elbows up wasn't just rude, you were basically invading your neighbor's personal space. It was a full-on space invasion. You know, our language is basically a living museum. It's full of these little historical fossils. Think about it. When we say bite the bullet, that comes from a time way before anesthesia, when a wounded soldier would literally bite down on a lead bullet to deal with the pain. Or break the ice, that's not just a metaphor, it came from actual ships that had to break through frozen rivers to open up trade routes, a real gesture of goodwill. Mad as a Hatter? That wasn't just some character in a story, it was a real tragic condition caused by mercury poisoning that affected French hat makers back in the 17th century. And go the whole 9 yards? Yep, that's a nod to the full 9-yard-long ammunition belt for a World War II fighter pilot. You were giving it everything you had. So it's not just our words, right? Sometimes the simplest things, the most everyday objects, have these incredibly complicated backstories. I mean, take the zipper. The zipper. We use them every single day and don't think twice. But believe me, the journey from that first idea to the zipper on your jacket was anything but simple. It was this long, super frustrating, and really expensive struggle. And this timeline, wow, it just shows you how tough innovation can really be. The whole thing kicks off way back in 1891 with this clunky, complicated fastener for shoes. Then, in 1905, they tried again with something called the security fastener. They marketed it to women for their skirts, but it was totally unreliable. It would just pop open at the worst possible moments. Not great. It wasn't until 1913 that an engineer named Gideon Sunback finally nailed the interlocking design that we still use today. But get this, even after he perfected it, it took another 24 years for the fashion industry to finally get on board and start using it for men's pants in 1937. That's a 46-year journey, almost half a century of failure, and just sticking with it. So what's the big takeaway here? It's that the things that seem totally ordinary are often packed with these extraordinary stories of invention, of failure, of huge cultural shifts. It reminds me of what the architectural critic Siegfried Gideon once said, "For the historian, there are no banal things." And he was so right. Everything has a past that's worth digging into. And you know, this idea of finding something profound in the mundane wasn't just for historians. It spilled over into the art world too. In the 1950s, you had artists like Robert Rauschenberg creating these incredible combined paintings. He would take discarded items, literally just everyday junk, and turn them into celebrated works of art. He was basically challenging all of us to look a little closer at the world of things we usually just ignore. Okay, but let's shift gears a bit, because not all of these hidden histories are just quirky facts or inspiring stories of invention. Sometimes the origins of our everyday habits are rooted in something, well, much darker and more painful. Let me ask you something. Think about tipping your server. If you're in the US, it's something we do pretty much every time we eat out, almost without thinking. But have you ever really stopped to wonder where that custom really comes from? Well, it turns out that tipping really took hold in the United States right after the Civil War, and it was used by employers, especially in places like restaurants and on the railroads, as a way to hire newly freed black workers without actually having to pay them a wage. The whole system was designed to shift the responsibility for a worker's income from the business owner onto the customer. And this number, this is the direct legacy of that system today, $2.13. That is the federal tipped minimum wage per hour, and it has not gone up since 1991.
It's a separate, much lower wage that legally lets employers pay just a fraction of the standard minimum wage, with the idea that customer tips are supposed to make up the rest.
And the economic fallout from this kind of two-tiered system is, well, it's pretty stark. If you look at this chart, you can see the poverty rate for tipped workers is over 11%. That's more than double the rate for other workers. So there's a really clear, direct line between this wage system and real economic hardship.
So, who is this system affecting the most? When you break down the numbers, you can see who's really carrying the weight of this history. Nearly 70% of the tipped workforce is made up of women. That's a huge overrepresentation compared to the overall workforce. And we see the same pattern for Hispanic, AAPI, and foreign-born workers. The legacy of this system is still having a major impact on some of the most vulnerable groups in the labor market.
So when you put it all together, you realize the past is never really gone, is it? It's right here with us. It's in the words we use, it's in the design of the things on our desk, and yeah, it's even in our pockets, in the economic systems that affect people's lives every single day.
So from a simple sneeze, to a zipper, to the way we pay a restaurant bill, our daily lives are just layered with these incredible histories. The real question isn't what we talked about today. The real question is, now that you know how to look, what hidden history will you uncover tomorrow?